So, very good evening to all of you. It's my pleasure in welcoming you all for today's Indic Way Power Series session. And today's topic is on chaos to clarity, the power of the intellect. And to introduce the speakers in today's session, we have with us our very own charter member, Mr. Deepak Ramesh, who is the co-founder and CEO at Pranayon Technologies. Mr. Deepak is also a serial entrepreneur and is part of various other companies as well. And we're happy to have him with us today. With this, I would like to invite Mr. Deepak to introduce the speakers and the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Saurav. It's my great privilege to introduce Ramraj and JK. So without further ado, I will get started. Ramraj and JK have had the benefit of education from premier institutions in India and the opportunity to interact and learn from inspiring teachers and multifaceted co-students. They've been through satisfying corporate careers, entrepreneurial ventures, and social organizations where they grew into leadership roles and rode the waves of both challenges and opportunities while their learning never stopped. They continue to be a part of some of these organizations. Growing up in families where parents, uncles, aunts, siblings, and cousins were closely knit, they have imbibed the value of relationships, of giving and receiving with grace. The treasure they have amassed over the years is the extended network of true friends built from their student days as well as from the business and social circles. They are believers in the wealth of knowledge and wisdom handed down from the ages, and they have consciously exposed themselves to this content from renowned teachers and source documents towards finding answers and approaches to leading a meaningful life. While they are practitioners, they continue to be students and seekers of the Indic way, striving to reach potential, to continuously perform and achieve, to do their best in any situation and face life's ups and downs with equanimity, to care for the well being of people and nurture relationships of value by reducing or eliminating negativities, building and leveraging positivities, and thereby engage with life with energy, enthusiasm, fulfillment, and happiness. The various sessions of the Indic Way highlight their learnings and practices, aspects that they have found to be of value for themselves in getting ready for life. So, quickly jumping into the actual session today. Today's session is Chaos to Clarity, the Power of the Intellect. When expectations...
Deepak, that we'll take up. Deepak, that part we'll take up. So that intro.
Sure. Thanks, JK and Ramraj. We look forward to a very, very lively session. Thanks once again. Over to you.
Thanks, Deepak, for those very gracious words of introduction. Good evening, all of you. Ram and I have many times been saying that, when we are not able to see all of you, it's a little difficult, and we first want to know, though we can't look for a raise of hands, some of you may still be first-timers to the Indic series. So I will just give a couple of lines of introduction on what the Indic Power Series is, and then I'll request Ram to give some of his opening remarks. So we have spoken of starting from, assume you had an Aladdin's lamp, and therefore a genie under your command. And therefore with this genie, all your problems are solved and all your wishes come true. And make sure that your life is just one path of happiness all the time. We've taken the same parallel to say that there are many powerful genies that we possess within ourselves. And that if only we can recognize them and then tap into their potential, they would come to our assistance either to combat difficulties or to power achievement and power and move towards a life filled with joy and success. So it is towards that the different sessions of the Indic Power Series have been put together. And in the next slide, I may share some of gone through, and then the current topic, before which I request Ramraj for his opening remarks.
Thanks, JK, and good evening, everybody, once again. As JK said, the objective here is being how to release the genie so that we can get to our full potential. Often, when we get to life, how are we learning the skills of living, the techniques to live? We learn our maths and arithmetic and writing and the 3 R's and all of that. But how do we learn the skills and techniques to live? It is usually by looking at our parents, at our elders, role models, and often through experience. In some way, stumble, fall, pick ourselves up, and go. And therefore, we feel that we have, through watching, learning, observing, we know how to live life. I was just reading in today's Hindu, they have that column 6 days a week. And today it said, it doesn't matter what your age is, you can still learn. And if we have that attitude, then every time we are looking to learn how to get our full potential, what can we do to improve from where we are? And all of this is triggered by our sense of disturbances, agitation, complacency sometimes, and not necessarily thinking we can get our full potential. So this series is to encourage us to learn and get to our full potential, but at the same time being happy and peaceful. So back to you, JK, and let me see.
Thanks, Ram. So if you look at the program, we have already covered the power of I, the power to transform, the power of learning, and you'll find we have referred to the same thing which Ramraj said, that when we say learning, it's beyond ABCD, which means what is it that we have learned in school or college sometimes is not even relevant in getting ready for life. So beyond that, what is it we need to learn? The power of choice, the power over emotions, the power of action, and the power to nurture relationships. So in each of these sessions, we would have identified some genie, some power that we have, which will help in that specific area in terms of getting ready for life. And therefore, in this session, we are taking up another very important aspect that we have. Ramraj has referred to this almost in every session in terms of the power of the intellect, and we will do a deep dive to understand what it is and how we can tap into it. And we end off the entire series with the power to succeed and the power for happiness. So if we get into this session, we have covered many of this in earlier sessions, what we called rattles and disturbances. And various sessions, we have taken examples where the mind gets rattled or disturbed. I will very quickly summarize for the benefit of some who may be new with just one-liners in each. We took this example of a coconut falling on a car. And we said if the coconut fell on the neighbor's car, no disturbance. But if the coconut fell on our car, then we get trouble. And in that session, we took you through what it is, what causes it, and what we can do. But we have seen this as an example. In another session, we saw this a wallet stolen at knife point while someone is holidaying with his family in South Africa. And therefore, the immediate anxiety, fear, combinations of those, but a mind that gets disturbed, a mind that is rattled. Same thing we took in another session. The teacher calls the parents and says, you have to come and meet me because your child is unable to cope at school. Now, this caused other difficulties, other discussions, which we went through in that session. Business downturn during COVID, we went through this in another session. So the decision in front of somebody, hey, should I close down because the travel business is not going to pick up? What should I do? Or should I wait? And then different difficulties under that particular situation of a rattle or a disturbance. A master health check suddenly throws surprises, and therefore wife and husband discuss what is it that they should now do. Stressful interaction with a mother-in-law or a boss where the relationship is strained and therefore always unpleasant in terms of how this particular interaction was. We've looked at many of these, and in each one of these, we identify that therefore it's a mind that gets rattled or disturbed, and in each session, we took up something specific, either to move towards an action or the power of choice or the power to build relationships, and therefore we have seen these situations in those earlier sessions. Now, if I summarize all these different, I would say, instances or situations that we shared with you in earlier sessions, they will come under these. When an expectation is not met, or there is an unforeseen event, or there's an uncertainty about the future, or a strain in a relationship, the mind gets disturbed. So if you look at all these and many other situations we have covered in earlier sessions, they will all fall under one of these. If an expectation is met, there is no disturbance. But only when the expectation is not met, the mind gets disturbed. And so it is with these other aspects that we have put down. And these are what we have covered in our earlier sessions. Ram?
Next.
Now, all these which we covered, in many of those instances are what we will call maybe sometimes a little larger problem. Okay, child unable to cope at school. Yeah, it's not a simple thing. It happens sometimes. Or wallet stolen, doesn't happen every day, but it takes you by surprise. Now we want to move specifically into day-to-day occurrences. We want to move into day-to-day occurrences in this session and point out how day-to-day occurrences causes rattles and disturbances. And therefore we want to say, if we understand how to handle these day-to-day occurrences that can cause rattles or disturbance, we are better empowered to take every day and therefore every week and therefore every month and every year, and therefore a better way in the manner in which we can lead our lives. So we specifically chose that we should address day-to-day occurrences. So let's say take the first one. I thought breakfast would be ready, but it wasn't, and I was getting late. Now I want some interaction. I want to say, what would be our reaction? 8:30 in the morning, I'm dressed, I'm ready, I have a meeting in the office, but breakfast is not ready. Anybody? So Saurav, if anybody raises their hands, please, we'll take only one comment for each one.
Yes, sir. So this time actually the participants can unmute themselves and talk. But if somebody raises their hand, I'll have them unmute.
Yes, please. Let it be raising hands so that.
Understood. Understood.
Sir, this is Jawahar. Good evening, sir.
Yes, Jawahar. Always the opening batsman. I'm happy that you are ready to come on first.
Thank you, sir. Sir, my feeling will be just frustration, sir. A lot of frustration.
Okay. Frustration.
Yeah.
Okay, Rajaram, raise his hand. Breakfast not ready.
But
Getting late for office.
Maybe I understand. Good evening to everybody. I thought maybe I misunderstood. I thought you wanted examples from day-to-day.
No. What is your reaction? Will you shout at your wife or you won't shout at your wife?
Oh, you're asking about that specific instance.
That specific instance. That's it. I thought.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's not going to be a pleasant interaction. Okay, so yeah, frustration, and also the fact that other person probably does not understand what I'm going through. So
I told you to get breakfast ready. I told you how to go to the office early.
exactly.
Something like that, or no? It's okay, honey. It's all right. Okay, so that's one instance. Second one, highly unlikely. So let's take the other one. My daughter spilled juice on my shirt or on my silk sari. Okay. On my silk sari is what I wanted to do, but I don't know. I'm still sorry. I was getting ready to go for this wedding along everybody. My daughter spilled juice on my silk sari. What is our reaction? Anybody?
Disappointment, sir.
However, I want some others to back. Thank you for your comment, but yes, I want two others who are raised. That's nice, Balakumar. You are a very evolved person, I must say.
So we have a few
So, comments which are, let it come, because I want to take each one in a different context. So let's move to the next. Servant maid broke my favorite vase, expensive one. And I had it in the drawing room. It's the showpiece in the house. Everybody who comes will say, hey, this lovely vase, where did you get it? And she broke it. Anybody else? Somebody who raised their hand for the previous question, they may wish to comment on this one, please.
Go to the next, JK, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, can I
Yeah.
say? I didn't raise my hand,
Yes,
but can I
please.
say
Yeah.
something? Yes, it happened to me. Actually, the reaction was
Hello,
I
sir.
didn't
This is
show up.
Arvind Rajagopal here.
Yes.
My reaction would be same. I will conclude that I should avoid fragile objects moving forward.
Oh, we are having one set of very mature audience.
All Sattvic people.
All Sattvic only. I know.
All Sattvic.
No, I genuinely wanted to comment for the first one. I will sincerely think whether my mom has any situation that she could not prepare first.
Sure. Very
Yeah, okay.
good. Okay, my driver didn't show up. And he didn't tell me, come on, I'm getting late, blah, blah, all that same situation. Okay, I just want to say it causes irritation. So I got into the car, I was speeding, got caught by the cop for going through red. What do you think will run through my mind? Okay, I will stop with saying rattles and disturbances, therefore, I've got a whole thing of this, I'm dealing with this. Okay. My boss ticked me off in the meeting in front of everybody else. What is it? You can't even take care of that? That's what he told me. Can't even take care of that. We want to say, therefore, in all these are day-to-day occurrences. You can all imagine, you've all gone through many of these, hundreds of these. Every one of this will cause a rattle or a disturbance in some form. Those of us who are mature and sattvic, we may not show that rattle or disturbance, but the rattle of disturbance will exist. I may say something else, but the rattle or disturbance will exist. I want to tell the servant maid, hey, what is there? Even 1 year of your salary won't cover the cost of this vase. What do you think? Blah, blah, blah. I cannot say, but lots of these thoughts and emotions are running through, and therefore these day-to-day occurrences cause rattles and disturbances. Right?
And the reason, this day-to-day occurrences and the disturbances, as you can see, it can cascade. It starts with breakfast being late, and then driver didn't show up, and every step, and then you get caught by a cop because what on earth happened? Today I think I got up on the wrong side of the bed. My stars are not okay. And I get more and more worked up. Why me? Why me? And the reason these little events are being highlighted here is that this is enough to cause us rattle and disturbances, to spoil a day, to spoil our ability to take a decision, to make the right choice. And our life depends, our fruits, our results are effects of our action. The cause is right action. And therefore, in all our sessions, we've been saying, how do we act correct? And what is it that we ought to be doing? And these little things that happen every day that we shakes us. And this is just to say, can we be aware of these day-to-day small rattles and disturbances that could spoil the quality of our choice making and the quality of our actions, and which means the effect that will come later down the way will get affected. So that every day, just to be a boss. Back to you, JK.
Yeah. So what happens? Our normal reactions in all those situations, the emotions on display, anger, disappointment, anxiety, fear, sadness, dejection, one of these, combination of these, definitely. More important, shout and scream or argue with the people involved. And this is the normal reaction. How could you? Why did you? All leading up to something. Therefore, shout and scream or argue with the people involved. Moan and groan about the situation. Oh, this cop has caught me now. Yeah. Oh, what? Again, go through this whole rigmarole of all that. Moan and groan about the situation. Get stressed out and mixed up and keep reacting. So you said, I said, no, how did you? No, you should have. No, I could have. You didn't. It keeps reacting, and therefore that continues as our reaction. Not sure what to do, and therefore it's a mind that goes into turmoil. So whenever everything happens as per expectation, everybody is smiling at me, then everything's hunky-dory. But the moment something like this, not as per expectation, unforeseen, some relationship strain, automatic, one of these reactions, and then one of the way in which our emotions are on display.
Also, what happens is this may trigger a response because we are anxious. Boss is waiting. I'm running late. It's a very important meeting. We lash out at the person and say things that we regret later. A little girl, knowing that you're going out, comes running with a glass of juice for you to have before it goes, trips and drops it on your sari. You lose it on her. Just watch her face. And then we feel that regret of having lost our temper at that moment, of having said something that we regret for, saying, oh God, why did I do that? We become, that regret also spoils the rest of our day and causes the disturbances. And again, therefore, the rest of the day, we could be suffering in the quality of our decision making. And that is why we're saying, watch it. It is not that it won't happen. How quickly can we come to normal before we lash out? That is what we are saying, be aware. And this is what we have touched upon in each of our previous sessions, that we will get rattles and disturbances. How quickly do we come back to normal? Those are things. Therefore, first is an awareness. What are the emotions on display? And that's why we are pointing out some triggers, an awareness, and then how do we minimize? How do we eliminate? Back to you, Jake.
So let us first understand, why does the mind get disturbed? And we must understand this, because then what Ram said and what we are going to say even during the session, that we can watch and observe, will become easier. We must first therefore know, why does the mind get disturbed? Now, all of us know our PC, the laptop or the personal computer, and the laptop or the PC has what is called the IO, input-output controller. Now, the input-output controller, the input side receives all the input signals. So whether from the mouse, keyboard, audio, Ethernet, USB ports, from all of those input devices or the ports, the signal reaches the input-output controller. Yeah, it will send it to the CPU for processing or directions, and then it will again communicate back with output devices, which could be memory, storage, monitor, printer, hard disk, or the cloud, to do whatever it needs to do. But the input-output controller is the first chip or the first equipment in the PC or the laptop which receives all the input signals. In a similar fashion, the mind is our input-output controller. So the mind receives all the input signals or the stimuli from the external world. So the five senses. So I see something, I hear something, I smell something, I taste something, I touch and feel something. It is all first connected to the mind. So the mind is the receiver of all these signals and stimuli from the external world, and therefore the mind is most susceptible to get rattled or disturbed because it is therefore at that interface with the external world. That's why the mind gets disturbed. Huh?
No, JK.
So the mind is that instrument. We'll now move into understanding the mind and the different aspects that are part of the mind. That gives us a better ability then to move towards what is it we need to do, which is the core of the session in understanding the buddhi that we possess. So the mind in the Indic thinking has four aspects. The manas or the lower mind, ahankara or the ego, buddhi or the intellect, and chitta, which is actually the mind stuff or consciousness, are the aspects of the mind. We are deliberately saying aspects of the mind, and we are not saying components of the mind, because it's not that there are four individual chips that have been placed in the laptop. At any one point of time, it is still the mind as we are referring to it, but one of these would predominate, and this will be the one which is at that slice of time, at that particular moment, it is one of these aspects.
Hello.
JK can't hear you. JK?
I think
Mr. JK has
he need to
joined
be
us. He has to
unmuted.
answer. You have to unmute yourself.
JK, you're back?
Yes, sir. I see him on screen. He
Okay,
is
now
yet to
can you hear me?
Yes, I
Yeah.
can. Yeah, clear now. You need to get the slide back.
Yeah, right. So any comments, Ram, on the previous one, which is?
I think the next one maybe is where we need to get to, where we talk about the manas
So
itself.
let's take the first aspect of our thing,
Slide.
which is the manas.
JK, the slide.
Can you hear? Is it visible now?
No, sir. I think you will have to share it again.
Okay now?
Yes.
Yes.
So the aspects or the functions of the mind, like we said, it's the user interface layer. So it's connected to the external world. It's the input-output controller. It's the one which experiences perceives the world. It's a thought engine. It also interacts with memory, which is an aspect of chitta. So that this is the mind and the manas and its functions. Continue with the manas and its functions. Therefore, it moves from thought to thought. It has contradictions, restlessness. It's occupied with thoughts and feelings, regrets and anxieties. It forms likes and dislikes, attachments and detachments. And it's the one which experiences happiness and unhappiness. Huh?
Yeah. So Manas is described as a monkey because of the restlessness, and symbolically, therefore, somebody who can be in control of an army of monkeys must be godlike. And that is really the symbol of how somebody can be or needs to be aligning or controlling the mind. Mind is full of emotions. One moment, the mind could be listening. Next moment, it may be thinking, oh, monkey, Hanuman, you remember he went near the Himalayas or wherever he went. And we are already thinking of my last trip to the mountains. And so it moves and it takes. And if we are not able to, then keep it in check, then it is all over the place. And completely full of likes and dislikes. The challenge for us is, from childhood, we encourage likes and dislikes. And therefore, the manas becomes stronger and stronger because we say, oh, I don't like this, I like this. Let me do something that I like. Getting up in the morning and exercising in the beginning is painful. So I say, oh, let me laze. I'm sure I'll catch up with it some other time. So often, because we have encouraged likes and dislikes, the manas becomes stronger and stronger, and our decision-making becomes more and more emotion-based. And therefore, then we are full of regret because we may not have exercised the right choice because it's based on likes and dislikes. And that is why we are highlighting the quality of the manas is just likes and dislikes and emotions. Back to you, Jake.
The pendulum of the mind alternates between sense and nonsense, not between right and wrong. Nice, interesting statement from Carl Jung. Now let's understand ahamkara, or ego is our translation in English. It's the one which adds the I or the ownership to everything around us, the me and the mind. It's the identity and individuality. This is the important we should understand, that it can label or color the incoming sensory impression. So whatever I am seeing or I'm hearing, I add a color, and therefore it's with that coloring, hey, he didn't listen to what I said, is how I've stored it in my mind. That is, there is an I-ness component. Okay, so that's the way I've stored it. The next time I'm interacting with this person, is what will keep on coming back to me. So the fact is that, yeah, he may have his own view, but the way I've stored that experience was he didn't listen to me. And that I component adds color to what happens, and that is the way it stores in memory. So we should be watchful and aware of what happens here. And it's also causes of likes, dislikes, opinions, and prejudices. A lot of this is because of the ahamkara. Because my opinion, my view, my prejudice, my is the aspect that the ahamkara adds to this whole dimension. I only want to add that not all ego is bad. We all say, no, ego, we must give up ego. No. It's like good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. Okay. We need good, it's not that all cholesterol is bad. The HDL is a damn good component that we need to have. Similarly, ego powers the will and the determination, and there's a lot of positive aspect of also making sure that it's a healthy ego that can take us forward.
So if you go back to those daily examples of what disturbed us, I didn't get my breakfast on time. I didn't get my breakfast on time. I have an important meeting to go. Don't you realize that I'm the breadwinner of this place? I. That actually then snowballs into more and more and more anger and frustration. And that is where everything. Why me? Why should it happen to me? So why cop lets everybody through the red light? Why me? So that is the ahamkara side. When the minus I, and then everything gets exaggerated because I'm so important and you're not recognizing my importance. So back to you, Jackie.
I have a question. Can I ask a question now or should I?
Sure,
My
Adam.
question is for exact same example that was discussed from a day-to-day thing. Could you explain it with the same situation with the response being both from Manas and Ahankara, two different responses for the same situation?
Absolutely.
So that the
Very, very interesting question. We have that coming up, and thank you for raising it even now. Yes, we want to certainly share that to say, same situation, what happens when these different aspects of the mind are the active players at that point in time. Very interesting question, Rajaram.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, yes. The buddhi or the intellect, we've been referring to this in every session. This is the one which provides objectivity, discrimination, and helps us decide between all the choices. Ram?
So this is, we are so, we look up to people who remain calm, who look objective, who look balanced, equanimous, because they don't seem to be rattled. And therefore, their choices the decisions they make seems to be quite balanced. And that comes because the buddhi, the intellect, is available at the time that they are trying to make those choices or decisions. So the buddhi is the discriminating factor. The manas, we could say, is the child in us, and the buddhi could be the adult in us. So how do we make sure that when things matter, the adult in us is available? The ability to choose right from wrong, the ability to choose the risk factors, to make sure we are not hurting people, a sense of proportion in what we do. All of that comes by having the buddhi available at the time of taking decision. The challenge for many of us is that the buddhi is usually available after the decision is made, and at the end of the day when we are going home and saying, oh God, I wish I had thought of it. So this is the buddhi, that is the discriminatory factor, the adult in us. Back to you.
The chitta is a very important aspect of the mind. The chitta is really the mind stuff. This is you can assume that this is the stage, this is the bed. It is on this bed or the mind stuff called chitta that the other aspects come as actors, play their role for that particular microsecond and go away. So please understand, chitta is that mind field or the bed on which the other aspects of the mind surface. And therefore, it is the zone where the thoughts arise. It's also the custodian of memory and the storehouse of all the experiences. It's all governed by chitta. So we must have the understanding of how this whole thing works. Therefore, in the chitta, thoughts are like ripples that happen. And thoughts will arise and fall, arise and rise and fall, rise and fall, rise and fall. They are like ripples in a lake. If there are no thoughts, that lake is extremely calm. And that is the default aspect of the chitta, that it is undisturbed. The thoughts are like ripples. They come up, rise, fall. When some thought is very powerful and it holds you, especially negative thoughts, they keep on arising and they snowball and snowball. It's like a whirlpool now suddenly in that lake, and that causes the greater disturbances. So let us understand that it is in chitta that the different other aspects of the mind come in as actors and play for that particular microsecond, and that continuously keeps happening as how we operate. It's also the conscience. So if you say experiencing the mind, how do we experience the mind? Whichever aspect of the mind it is. We experience the manas, the ahamkara or buddhi only via thoughts and feelings. It's only because of a particular thought or feeling that I have, I experience the mind. There is no other way we experience the mind. It's not like it's a component that is available, but it's more software. And in the Indic thinking, a lot of I would say thought in terms of saying that the mind is not just within the brain system, that the mind is all over the body. Every cell has a mind. So the mind is a extremely powerful aspect in how it is, and we experience the mind only via thoughts and feelings. And therefore, there are thoughts which are owned by the manas, there are thoughts which are owned by ahamkara, and there are thoughts that are owned by the buddhi, which means at that particular point of time, that thought which is occurring in the mind space is triggered by, and the owner of that thought is manas. So if you take those examples, Ram, maybe you would like to expand on this, on that, taking those same examples of those aspects which we discussed, and Rajaram, it may give you some answer to something that you raised.
Sure, sir.
So, while JK was suggesting that we go back to the examples, I will use one that I keep using to remind myself. I love sweets. So the manas, I love it, I like it. So that's owned by the manas. When I see a sweet, when I see a buffet, the dessert is where I first head to, because that's where I really like it. Ahamkara, I love it. I like it. This is me. The buddhi says diabetic. Now, I eat or I don't eat that sweet based on whether I am deciding based on the buddhi or the manas. And so, if you were to take what happened when I didn't get my breakfast on time. So first of all, what happened? I'm angry. That's an emotion. That's the first response that I have. Or I'm hurt. Hey, she knew that I had an important meeting. So that's an emotion that comes, that's owned by manas. The ahamkara says, hey, I am the important guy here. I have to go to office now. So why am I not being treated with that extra importance? And finally, the buddhi, if it is available, will say, this is the first time it's happened. It's not happened before. So must be something, she must have been busy. But if the buddhi is not available and the manas and the ahamkara are the ones that are directing our response, JK said input, output. The input is food was late. The output could be just keep quiet, or the output could be a shouting, or it could just be an internal churning of anger. So that's what the thoughts and feelings and what owns and how the response comes depends on which organ you're using or which aspect you're using, as JK said. The software that will direct your response. If it is from manas, it could be knee-jerk, it could cause regrets. If it is from ahankara, it could be similar. I am the important guy, don't you know that? And of course, buddhi means hopefully we will have greater relationship. Back to you, JK. You want to add something?
And to add to that, the manas is the one which pops up with, hey, how could you? Why do you not? How? Why? How? Why? How? Hey, how could you not prepare? How could you break it? How could my boss talk like that in the meeting? So a lot of those thoughts are triggered by the manas. The ahankara is because, like Ram said, my boss has been broken. Or he spoke about me. And therefore those thoughts are owned by ahankara. The buddhi would say, hey, today it's late, don't worry, ma. I'll have breakfast in the office. I really have to rush for this meeting. So in situations which are similar, the different thoughts can be all triggered by these different aspects of the mind. So Radhara, maybe that would give some answers to the question.
So it was very nice. And as both of you were speaking, I was just trying to look at a parallel at the on the corporate or the work side of, some of us who work in large organizations. It now dawns on me that the buddhi aspect is used very infrequently. Most of the stuff is around ahankara and manas, right? I think transactions on business or how we handle people and teams, seldom we realize that we are not even bringing in the buddhi aspect into the discussions, and largely leading through ahankara and manas. Sorry.
We're all successful. Absolutely. We're all successful, Raja Ram, in the land of the blind. That guy is a hero.
No, Rajaram, I've shared this with you earlier, but it's for the benefit of everybody, that when you continue to stay in the problem and you keep on discussing the problem, it is the mind and the ahankara which is involved. Keep on discussing the problem. When you move to a solution, the buddhi starts to come in. So the moment we, in a corporate or in any other thing, we stay in the problem and discuss the problem and analyze the problem and blah, 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 we are only in the mind and the ahankara side of it. Okay, so the most important thing, therefore, now all that we have said. So this buddhi is this great guy available in us, and Ram has expanded on that, how it can bring in either objectivity or quality of decision making, leading to quality of actions. How do you locate this guy?
Sir, I have a question.
Surface? Let me finish this. I'm going to take it up. Yeah. Who's this?
Ben. Ben has a question. We'll come back. Yeah.
So Ben, just after this, please. Yeah, I'll take it up.
Okay, please carry on.
Yeah. Just at the end of this slide, I'll take up. So how do you locate this? How do you make it surface? I remember we went to Darjeeling and went to this place called Tiger Hill, because early in the morning, the tourist guy said, you come by at 5 o'clock and then you can have a lovely view of Kanchanjunga. So we went there. And this is what we saw. This is what we saw. And we were all there waiting, and there was no Kanchanjunga. And this is all we saw. Only as the mist and the fog started to clear, we started to get a glimpse and a better view, and even a better view, and then the Kanchanjunga in all its glory. At all points of time, it was not that the Kanchanjunga did not exist. The Kanchanjunga was always there, and it always existed in that place. Just that it was not visible to us and we had to make sure that the mist or fog, not that we had to make sure, the mist or the fog had to clear before we could get a view of Kanchenjunga. And therefore, it's the same thing which we want to say. What is it we need to clear, the fog or the mist? Is reducing the mind's chatter. And Ram, I want you to now take over this particular thing, that reducing the mind's chatter and clearing the fog or the mist through these aspects which we said we take.
So, we spoke about coconut falling on the neighbor's car. Immediately, we have no problem. We are able to give the neighbor the right advice, call the insurance, do this, do that, whatever we have to do. When it is somebody else's problem, our buddhi is very easily available. When the coconut falls on our car, and if it is the neighbor's coconut falling on our car, where does our buddhi disappear? It is the mind that seems to be there, great anger, saying, I told you, chop that tree itself down. What the hell have you done? This is a new car, whatever it is. The manas is only available and not the buddhi. When it is our car, my car, then what happens? And that is what is that mind's chatter, the fog, the mist, when you can't see. So what is the difference between situation 1 and 2? When it is the neighbor's car, we are detached, we are distant, we are objective. When it is our car, we are emotional, and that objectivity is gone. So the key is, how do you manage to disengage or detach when it happens to us? How can we be objective when the problem happens to us? And the starting point is acceptance, as we have said before. Acceptance is, my breakfast has not come, I have a meeting. Now, why it has not come, etc., we'll worry later. Accept is, breakfast is not there. My child has got a bad review this time. Accept. Moment we accept, we start looking at what next. Till we accept and we let the manas come and cloud it, then we have no answers. We are in the problem, shouting and screaming externally or internally to ourselves, but we have not distanced ourselves. We are then in the problem and not in starting to look at what next. What next can happen only when we accept. Yes, the coconut has fallen. Yes, it's a brand new car. Now let me see what I need to do. And the moment we start thinking about that, JK, we've lost the slide. Then only do we start getting clarity. So there is this poem of Oliver Goldsmith, where he quotes saying that his head is above the clouds. And how to be above the clouds is what he talks about. And only when you have that your head is above the clouds, which means your buddhi is available to you, then you can start looking at the solutions, the choices, and what next. Till then, you're in the emotion and the mind is in control, and you're in that fog and mist. Back to you, Jake. JK, you're on mute. Still mute. Yeah, now.
Yeah. So there are two aspects to locating the buddhi and making it surface. The first is certainly, unless you reduce the mind's chatter, which is why I shared with you that in the chitta, at any point in time, there is only one aspect that is the actor, and it has complete control over the chitta. If the mind continues to be the actor in Chitta, Buddhi has no opportunity to come onto the stage. Only when the mind vacates, Buddhi can come onto the stage. Therefore, it is so important to reduce this mind's chatter and then quieten it down, because only then there is the opportunity for the Buddhi to come in. So it's possible to train the mind, and it's like a pet. You become aware, you watch it, you will know the thoughts which are coming. You watch your thoughts itself, you will know, hey, this thought, yeah. Now with all this background, you watch your thoughts, you will know, hey, this thought is being bloody triggered by manas. This thought being triggered by ahankara. This thought, yeah, it is the Buddhi's bloody nice, whatever. Please start watching, observing, and then you will start to find that you are able to train the mind, make it more susceptible, more for attention, acceptance, and then openness to guidance. We always talk of a closed mind. So we must understand, what is this closed mind? The closed mind is one in which Buddhi cannot enter. Anybody's Buddhi, whether my friend with his good advice or suggestion in the situation or my own, the closed mind is the one where Buddhi cannot enter. So train the mind through these observation, power of attention, these other aspects which are there, meditation, mindfulness, all are towards training the mind to become far more disciplined and far more ready to submit to the guidance from the Buddhi. So let's look at building the Buddhi. Ram, over to you again. Therefore, two aspects of building the Buddhi.
Go ahead, Jake.
No, this is the only thing I'll say, and then I'm going to hand over that. We said that what are the clouds? Because you have to clear the clouds. We have three types of clouds as far as the manas is concerned: ignorance, doubt, and misconception. Mind is the master of doubt. Pandlama, vandama, sariya tappa, aduavalya, illiya, blah, blah, blah. Mind is the master of doubt, misconception, and ignorance. Those are the clouds. And therefore, both to sharpen, to remove the clouds, and then to strengthen the intellect, Ram, I will hand over to you with this.
So, for most of us, we follow what is called the herd mentality. We just follow it because traditionally that is so. That's what my family has been doing. You join a company, you try to make a change, somebody will tell you that's how it has been done here. So it's a herd mentality that we usually follow. In order to strengthen the intellect, the first thing is not to take anything for granted. That is not how it is. That is so. It is tradition. My father said so, my grandfather said so, my teacher said so. Don't take anything for granted. This is not a disrespectful way of saying. This is just to ourselves. To ourselves, we first don't take anything for granted. Second, we question everything. We just question internally to ourselves. Should I have a choice now of shutting my business or reinvesting some money during this COVID time? What should I do? The general advice is shut. The general advice, especially the Western way, is shut and move on. But is that the right thing? I know there are 5 employees. I may need to do something. They left good jobs and came here because of me. Should I do something? You may not be able to do anything, but even just to think and say, what should I do? In this circumstance, what is the right thing to do? So question. Just because a venture capitalist tells you to do something, or your friend tells you to do something, it's a good input. It is not a direction. Moment any advice, anything that we read, we take it as a directive. then we have lost control. The remote is not with us. We've handed over the remote. So the thing is that we need to question, and then we may follow that advice. Maybe we'll decide that's the right advice and follow. So first is don't take anything for granted. Second is question everything. And the third is that in order to do this, we need to follow a step of choices. What we do as what if this happened, what? So that is logical reasoning. And with that, we will then come to what may be the right options for me to do, and then take a decision. If we do this in every circumstance, that's the exercise for this aspect of the buddhi. We need to keep exercising for it to come to the forefront at the time of making a decision or a choice. It should be on stage at that time. To be on stage at the time we want to act, we need to do this exercise of not taking anything for granted, questioning, logical reasoning. And all of this could happen quickly depending on the magnitude of the decision. So starting with an awareness that there is a choice to be made, a decision to be made, that a buddhi should be available, and then follow these steps. And that's how we will be strengthening the intellect to be available at the time we want to make a decision or choice, not after. So that is why this is how we build the buddhi. Back to you, Jackie.
Thanks, Ram. And to add to what Ram said, therefore, in this choice making and this decision making, it is not only about a problem situation. Therefore, when the breakfast was not ready, I already processed and my mind has come up with the fact that, hey, I'm saying, hey, it's fine, yeah, don't worry, I'll go and I'll have breakfast in the office. So it's not about only decision making. It is like Ram said, the assessment, the overall thing about that situation, and you're moving away from a manas-directed thought, word, or action, and a buddhi-directed thought, word, or action in that particular situation. So that's the thing in terms of all those aspects which Ram has shared to strengthen the intellect so that it becomes available to us in every situation. So let's now move to using the buddhi. I want to just point out, though we have shared with you, buddhi is that powerful component in us. I want to point out that a lot of times the buddhi and what we come up with may be still clouded. And it is not this pristine buddhi of that last photograph I showed you of Kanchenjunga with that bright sunshine on top of it. So buddhi can sometimes be depending upon how we are. See, we have taken you all through our natures of tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas being ignorance, rajas being all the emotions and actions, and sattva being the equanimous, more balanced and calm part of ourselves. We all know this father, son, and the donkey story, but for some who may not, I will just like to refresh your minds. Therefore, a father and a son are walking along the road with a donkey, and somebody on the street says, look, what are you doing? This little boy, you can easily put him on the donkey. Why are you making him walk? So the father says, yeah, that's a nice thing. So he puts the son on the donkey. They go for some more distance. Another person says, hey, this elderly person is walking. Little boy, you're sitting on the donkey. How can that be so? Oh, so they say yes, and the boy gets down. The father gets onto the donkey and they go for some distance. Another person says, you guys are idiots. The donkey can easily carry two people. So they say, yeah, and then both of them get onto the donkey, go for some more distance. And then another person says, hey, how can you be so cruel to this animal? And all your burden it is carrying. So they say, yeah, that's right. And they now carry the donkey on their shoulders and move along. Is the story. Now, in each of those, it's not that a decision was not taken. A decision was taken, but at all points of time, the decision taken was influenced by tamas, which was ignorance. And therefore, all those decisions, though somebody said, and I did, Ram raised this at times, therefore somebody said, but if you don't question it, if you don't think about it, and you just follow that, the buddhi of the father was in tamas, and so the decision making and what happened was still, you must understand, if the buddhi is in tamas, it does not mean that the right choice and the right decision becomes available to you. The second thing is buddhi can be influenced by manas and ahamkara. I want to share this nice little story called Third Thoughts. So there was this, art collector, and for many years, all his decisions were wrong. He bought at higher prices and he sold at lower prices. Or he bought at higher prices and he had to give it away because he could find no buyer. And he happened to come across this little shop in that city he visited. And in that shop, he found this lovely painting. And he thought that painting looked like a genuine Turner. Turner was an artist and Turner's painting. And so he was talking to the shopkeeper. Shopkeeper said, I'll give it to you for 10 shillings. Yeah, I also thought it could be a Turner's painting, but I've had no time to take it to London and get it valued by anybody. So it may be so, but I'm still happy to give you for 10 shillings. So the man buys that painting, takes it home, and then in a few days, he's able to find a buyer and able to sell it for 50 pounds. So he bought it for 10 shillings and he's made a profit of 49 pounds and 10 shillings. And he thinks to himself saying, hey, I think the right thing for me to do is to share this profit with that shopkeeper. Because in all fairness, we had all the discussion. So I think the right thing for me to do is send him close to 25 pounds, and he writes a note, writes out a check, but he has no stamp at that point in time. So he lets it on the table, goes to sleep. He gets up in the middle of the night, about 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And then he's thinking, hey, what is it that I'm doing? I'm the one who spotted that it was a Turner painting. I'm the one who sort of knew that it had value. All this sharing and all that is not the right thing to do. Maybe I can send 10 pounds. It be good enough. And so he thinks in the morning, I'm going to write another letter and tear off the check, and maybe 10 pounds should be fine. And he goes to sleep, gets up around 5:36 in the morning, and then again he's thinking, I think even 10 pounds is a little too much. Then the shopkeeper will think that every customer is going to send him money, and that's not to raise his expectations. Maybe 5 pounds should do. So he writes out a check for 5 pounds, a letter in that order, puts it into that envelope, and ready to go to the club. As he's getting ready to go to the club, again another thought strikes him saying, hey, 5 pounds. This is the first time that I've really made a damn good deal. Lady Fortune otherwise will stop smiling at me. I mean, I'm in this business. I mean, I located the buyer. I swung the deal for 50 pounds. Maybe a 1 pound token is more than enough. And therefore, he tears off that 5 pound, writes out 1 pound, one check, an equivalent letter, puts it in his pocket, takes it to the club to put a stamp and all that. While he's in the club, he loses some money playing bridge, and having lunch, he says, look, all this bloody bullshit. He tears off the envelope, tears off the check, tears off everything, and says the deal is done. It's a buyer-seller arrangement. The shopkeeper sold it for whatever best price he thought he could do. I got it as a customer, and I owe no obligation to the shopkeeper after that. It's a done deal. And that's the story. I want to place this with all of you. At all points of time, a decision was made by this person. Are we saying that his buddhi had no role to play? So if you analyze this, and if you look at the different decisions that he took at different points of time, you will find that the buddhi was either influenced by the ahamkara or the manas, and then he moved to different decisions. Ram, maybe you'd like to add something.
So, when he decided to give half the money, he may think, wow, that's the right decision. When he decided not to give anything, because that's the business, some people will say, you're in business. That's the right decision. How do you arrive at what is the right decision? Which decision is right? And what is that process of knowing that your buddhi is there? It is not your ego, ahankara, or your manas. Now, maybe when I decided that I'll give half, or he decided he'll give half, maybe it was his ego that said, oh, I need to be known as a fair-minded fellow, that I will share things. Maybe it was his mind which came up and said, if I shared it, I will feel good about it. When he decided not to give anything, maybe the intellect was there because he needed the money. It was entirely his decision. And he had told him that this may be a turner. And the shopkeeper, in all his understanding, had said, I think so too, take it away, brother. Maybe has paid the full money. So each time that question that comes up is it the manas that is influencing, and we pretend and understand that feel-good factor that I am now giving him 25 pounds is really, we are rationalizing it as buddhi. Or it is the ego which comes in front and we rationalize it and say it's the buddhi. Or is it actually the buddhi? And that's food for thought as we think through. So don't necessarily think that the buddhi is automatically available when you feel good about a decision in the beginning. So just, again, it goes back, don't take anything for granted, question everything, and then take a choice. So that's what Third Thoughts is all about.
Thanks, Ram. I remember when I was sharing this story with another friend of mine, he said, hey, if that guy, after he made that, 50-pound sale, if he had gone to his wife and said, honey, I want to send 25 pounds to that shopkeeper, she would have told him, you're an idiot or what? And what are you trying to do? And then because neither what fairness, what other things, he would have got the perspective in terms of that deal and that transaction for what it is and who needs to be do something. Sometimes, like Ram was saying, therefore it was these other manas, all this sense of maybe fair play, all these other things are only pure emotions. But when they are removed, maybe there's a better decision making and things that are available. So we want to end this with only these two aspects. The mind, the whole purpose of this session is that we understand and we realize that we have this genie called the buddhi, and therefore that we should seek access the buddhi, especially for different situations and events, etc., which can otherwise be rattles and disturbances, and that would help us. And let us pause and go through in each one of our minds, if mind and ahankara's influence on thoughts, words, and actions. And we have seen that in each of those 5 small situations we put down, if the mind or the ahankara was dominant, and if they were the players in chitta at that point in time, the thoughts, words, or actions that we would have been in, whether we were interacting with the spouse, or the servant maid, or that little girl, or the cop, or my boss and other colleagues, in each one of those situations, each one would have been different. I might have even taken a panga with the boss to say, hey, how can you say that? I mean, don't you remember in something it would have led to an argument. So please understand mind and ahankara's influence on thoughts, words, and actions in every situation, especially the ones in which there is a rattle or a disturbance. And the same thing when it is influenced by the buddhi. Ram?
Things. The letting go and not responding at a certain time of situation should not be passive. It should not be a weakness. It is an application of the buddhi to say, no, I understand and I'm moving on. If the boss shouted at you in a public meeting, maybe that's not the forum, but maybe a one-on-one with the boss saying, hey, that hurt. You could have given that feedback. So it is not an unintelligent lack of response. It's not passive. It's not a doormat. It is an intelligent application to be able to respond at the right time. So that's one. The second is, why are we emphasizing the need for the buddhi? And Shakespeare puts it beautifully in his place. He just takes one weakness, one part where the mind was predominant. You take King Lear. I'm sure all of you know, but very quickly, King Lear divides his property amongst his 3 daughters. 2 of them flatter him. Third one does not, though she was the genuine one who had genuine feelings. So he doesn't give it to her and divides the property instead by 3 into 2 and goes into ruin. Othello, jealousy, kills his wife because somebody told him something. Jealousy, like that, if you just look at those plays, one aspect, one emotion that comes to the forefront can be fatal, can destroy your life and your harmony and peace. Here we are talking about making sure that buddhi is available to bring out the genie and get to a full potential, be equanimous. So enough literature is there in Shakespeare, in Adi Shankara, anywhere that we can look at, to say one emotional decision would take us cascading down. And therefore the need. It's like putting a drunken driver to drive a car. We don't know where it may go. So bring the adult, make it available in our decision making, not the child. JK.
Thanks, Ram. So that brings us to the end of what we have done. So we have covered rattles and disturbances, why the mind gets disturbed, understanding the mind, experiencing the mind, locating the buddhi and making it surface. We covered how to build the buddhi and therefore using the buddhi. And we are now open to questions. I know 1 or 2 questions came up in between, but we are ready now to take questions. Thank you.
So participants who have, Sir, Mr. Jawahar has requested to get unmuted.
Oh, Jawahar, in between, I remember somebody wanted to ask a question. So, Jawahar, if you could
I
just...
think Ben had a question. Ben had a question. We didn't answer it. We didn't hear it actually.
Yes,
Ben?
sir. Ben's unmuted. Mr. Ben?
Yeah. So, but then on a daily basis, I understand the part of tamas, rajas, and sattva characters basically. And all the characters or all the types have the ahankar, buddhi, and all the 4 elements of, or the 4 aspects of mind, right? But then we oscillate between all the aspects of mind on a daily basis. But then when you are dealing outside in the real world, we often come across people who are mostly, try to, dwell in the manas. So somebody who is oscillating between buddhi and more into buddhi aspect of life, how do you deal with those people who are majority who use manas, be it workplace or any aspect of life?
Sure, I'll try first. When I think in relationships, we mentioned that for those few people who matter to us, we start by assessing. We usually don't assess people who really matter. If it's a boss, it's a colleague, it's people in the office, at home, whatever it is, we need to assess. And if we assess and find that these colleagues in the office or this colleague in the office operates entirely based on emotions and the manas, then the manner of dealing with that person has to be, that means he's operating or she's operating as from a position of a child. And you could then operate at the position of a child or an adult. And then decide that it'll be the adult in you that deals with the child in your colleague. If it became child to child, it could be fun or it could be chaos. And that is really why the first and most important thing is an assessment to know how this person will predominantly behave. And then deal with that person as an adult, not confront. When somebody is operating from the mind, it is very difficult to then you are acting like a child. If you act as an adult, you will not confront. And then you will find a way to lead the child in that person to the end result that you need and slowly help that person develop. So don't go down and be another child. Don't confront. First is assess, don't confront, and then deal as an adult with the child. Okay? Next.
Yes, sir. So I've unmuted Mr. Jawahar.
Sir, can you hear me, sir?
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thanks for the opportunity for asking the question. Sir, a couple of questions. First, sir, Mr. Ramraj spoke about logical reasoning and deductions, right? So a lot of times in my life, my logical reasoning, when I do logical reasoning, my mind says go right. And then there is an intuition in me that says I have to go left. So I, a lot of times I'm in a dilemma. There is a fight between my intuition and my logical reasoning. And why is that? And how do I overcome this issues?
What has been the consequence of following either?
Yeah, sometimes, when I follow my intuition, I succeed, though the logical reasoning says I have to go to the right side. And, sometimes I fail and then I feel like, oh, I should have taken the logical reasoning side. So, I don't know which one is right. I'm kind of, a lot of times it happens to me that, intuition and the logical reasoning fights, they have a fight with each other.
Okay. JK, I think this.
I think, Jawahar, these are, not, in life, not all decisions need to be cold and calculated and at all points of time only driven by logical reasoning. All we are sharing is logical reasoning gives you a far better perspective. And then it is still your choice saying, hey, though, yeah, that may be so, my gut says I should do this. You are again using your buddhi in another form to say, I will override the logical reasoning and go with the gut. And this happens in lots of times. A lot of times, we keep saying, I want to go with my heart and not with my mind. Mind says, hey, heart says, so there is always this aspect. But even there, it is the fact that, yes, the buddhi is coming in and saying, in this particular instance, disregard logical reasoning and go with the gut.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Also, Jawahar, just understand, as JK said, we think we are doing logical reasoning. It could be tamasic, rajasic, or sattvic. So based on the outcome, you do an analysis and then see what was the quality of that logical reasoning too. So all these, every experience is just a stepping stone to improve ourselves and our decision making. So reflect on it and then move on so that you keep fine tuning your ability to take better and better choices.
Thank you, sir. Sir, one more question.
I remember in another situation, Jawahar, the same thing what Ram said. Yeah, what do you say? Logical reasoning. Maybe it was faulty logic. So just because it is logical reasoning, it's not that necessarily it leads to outcomes. Yeah. Anybody else who's got something?
Yeah, sir, just one more question.
Very nice, Jawahar.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, just one more quick question is that, sir, see, a lot of times, my mind says, I have to do something, and then my intellect says it is wrong. So, for example, right, I'll just quickly tell you an example. When I go to a buffet, right, I see delicious food. And then my mind says, okay, I'll go for one plate, and then I'll go to the next plate, a little more. But my intellect says, I'm overweight and I shouldn't take the next plate. But, I take the second plate because, I like it that it's a buffet is so delicious. And then after I finish it, right, and then my intellect starts working and says, and I feel guilty about taking the second plate. So, my intellect works, but it works only after I, eat the second plate. I don't know why, sir.
Ram's favorite.
Yeah. It's my favorite. Others that have eaten all the dessert at home. So it just shows you intellect is not available at the time of decision.
Yes.
And you're rationalizing it. So whether it is eating or whether it is taking a business decision and not to have too much regret, it needs to be available at the time of making decision. And the quality of our life becomes better and better each time if we follow the intellect as we take those decisions.
Okay, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Thank you very much.
Right. Okay. Anybody else? Or?
So there's this question in chat.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Was there somebody else?
Yeah, I if you allow, I will.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
So, like my strategy is usually to slow down, don't react, and then not immediate reaction, but after some time, if you react using your Vivek. So I just wanted to say, if we use this type of strategy, is it right or wrong?
I think it's a good strategy, Doctor, what you said, because our wisdom says sleep over it, especially if there are things which are important and we don't immediately react, but you think about it. I think it will lead to better approach. So there's a calmer mind in terms of what will influence the approach or decision at that time. So I think it's a good thing to do.
Oh, thanks, sir.
Yes, Saurav?
Yes, sir. So there was this question in the chat from Miss Ashwini. How do you differentiate if a thought is coming from manas or buddhi, was the question.
I think it is not the thought, but the response to the thought that matters. The thought comes that I like the sweets look delicious. This buffet looks fantastic. It doesn't matter. It could come from anywhere. What is the response to that? That's why JK said input, output, and a processor by which we respond. The body acts based on either from the manas or the buddhi or the ahankara, but your focus, how we respond at that point in time, was a processor available? Did we think it through? and then act and respond. That makes the difference, is what I would think matters more. From where are we responding to these thoughts? One. Second, if you remember, JK said, think of the mind as a pet, and that you need to help discipline it. So if you start getting more and more thoughts that you suddenly realize may be based on just likes and dislikes, just emotions, as you reflect on it, then you'll start channelizing it a bit and getting it a little more under control. It is the quality of those thoughts you will start reflecting on. How realistic, what's happening, is it pulling me into more being emotional than rational, things like that. It's okay.
I would just want to end with adding to what Ram said, to say, I don't want people thinking that mind is all very useless stuff and we lead our lives with buddhi. That is another stupid thing to do. Please understand, all the joy and happiness is in the mind, it's in the manas. This whole thing is about that in the manas, there are aspects which disturb and rattle. We have to understand, it's not that at all points of time, we don't even experience the world and we don't, you are receiving it in the manas. So it's not that manas must be vacated from the chitta and 24 hours we will live with the buddhi. No, we're only saying, please be aware of the aspects and the situations where the mind or the manas gets disturbed or rattled, and then seek the buddhi at that time so that you have a better approach and a better way for that. We're not saying completely remove manas from the overall space. No. It is the most natural, it's the default player in chitta. At all points of time, it is manas with which we engage the world. It is only in those sorts of things to say, rattles and disturbances become aware, and then you have a better aspect or equipment, as Ram would say, that the buddhi is available to assist and make sure we can move higher quality of decisions, higher quality of actions.
I think we've run out of time, JK.
Yeah.
Saurabh, back to you.
All right, Saurabh.
Yes, sir. So on behalf of TiE Chennai, it's again my pleasure to thank you for the session today, sir. Like always, it was a really enlightening session. And I would also like to thank the participants for their participation today. So each session we are having, people from other chapters to join. So we have somebody from Los Angeles today. So it's growing each session. So very happy to know that. And anybody
Saurabh, could you please point out the person from LA? We would like to certainly, on behalf of TiE, acknowledge if the person is still there.
Yes, he is still here. I'll just try unmuting him. I'll see if he's here with us. Mr. Vinod?
Yes, sir. I'm very happy to join. It's very, very beautiful the way the speakers explained about the mind and buddhi. Very beautiful, very beautiful. I really enjoyed it.
And thank you so much, Vinod Saab, for maybe it will be very early in the morning for you to have, logged in from LA and be with us.
Yes, it is very early, but it is worth attending the program.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yes, sir. So in case if you have missed the previous sessions of the Indic Power series, you can now watch the recap at our website. So my colleague Kapil has just posted the link over in the chat. So any of you who would like to view the previous sessions can go there, view the sessions. Thank you all once again.
Thank you.